Welcome to Golf in the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, joined as always by my good friend Connor Evers, and today we are revisiting the topic of tee times for the old course at St. Andrews. But before we get there, Connor, we've got a busy few weeks ahead of us. What is the latest up at H&B HQ?
Thanks, Deej. And you're correct. Looking forward to chatting more about St. Andrews and the old course a little bit more specifically today. Near and dear to our hearts, of course, but looking forward to chatting about that. And one of the big announcements that was just announced in January from the R&A we'll get into as well. But all good here at HQ. We are now less than a month away from the start of the 2025 golf travel season, which is very exciting for our members that are looking forward to traveling overseas this year. So all good on that front. And around give or take this time, we are recording it a few weeks out, but we will be receiving our allotment of guaranteed tee times from the St. Andrews Links Trust. So this episode is coming out at a very fun time for us, as well as our travelers that have been looking forward to traveling and going over and receiving that guaranteed time for 2026. And when we do receive those, it feels like Christmas morning here in the office. We like to kind of joke, but it does feel like that, which is fun. So all good, Deej. It's a fun time of the year for planning for next year. Pretty giddy again for planning, and then travelers looking forward to going here next couple weeks.
No doubt about it. It is kind of like Christmas. We'll get more into that, and it's a little bit like Christmas, I guess, for me, making the annual trip over for Scottish Golf Tourism Week. Actually, as we speak, I will be somewhere in Aberdeen, the Highlands, hard to say, really. Might be in St. Andrews. A lot of things up in the air at this point. But I know I'm supposed to be in Aberdeen for the convention side of things, and always great to see so many of our partners and friends in one place, and other acquaintances and so forth in the business, and just always a good time. And then I'm heading from there over to Ireland for about 8 or 10 days, mostly hitting Southwest Coast, and then hopping up to Dublin for a little bit. So again, hoping to see a lot of friends down there, hoping for some good weather to fly the drone around. Honestly, I'm not even really sure if the golf clubs are going. I know Connor will probably be sorely disappointed. He's giving me a big X on the screen right now, but I'll probably squeeze in a couple rounds of golf somewhere along the way. But shifting back to today's episode, we are revisiting the topic of Old Course at St. Andrews tee times. This is a topic that we've actually covered a few times in a few different ways, but the reason we're doing this is really a few things. Number one, a lot has changed since we covered this the first time. I think we did this back in like one of our first 4 or 5 episodes, and here we are at episode 55. And so, 2 years has passed. A lot of stuff has changed, but also, as Connor alluded to earlier, the biggie is that the 2027 Open is also coming back to the Old Course. And that's going to have sort of a long-term effect on those who are looking to play the Old Course in 27, 28, 29. And so we felt it was important to, revisit this topic, give the good lifers the best, most up-to-date information. So what we're going to do is run through the 4 key ways to land an Old Course tee time and talk a little about the Open as well. Connor, obviously, it is basically go time, if you will, in terms of guaranteed tee times for 2026. This is your wheelhouse, so I'm going to hand it off to you. What do folks need to know if they're hoping to head to the Old Course in 26 and beyond?
Thanks, Deej. And you're right. I mean, the nice thing about St. Andrews is they keep things pretty consistent year after year. But you are right. A lot has changed in the last, call it 18 months or so. But to kind of start it off with Old Course guaranteed times, you're definitely right. Time is now for 2026. And as this kind of episode comes out, authorized providers like us at H&B will start to receive our allocation of tee times for next year, for 2026. I'd say the one thing that really has changed is kind of the timetable of things. If you want a Old Course guaranteed time, we used to say in a lot of different articles, I mean, did you put them out there too? It's like, hey, start working around the beginning of the year prior. So that would be around January of 2025 of this year for intended play all of next year for 2026. And candidly, that's way too late now, which is kind of the basis of this. And that's kind of the big thing that's changed. Based off of kind of historical years when we do receive these guaranteed times, again, based off of that, we have a fairly good idea of the total amount of times we'll receive as well as per month basis. And from that as well as the standpoint of how many groups that have already essentially committed and have kind of said, "Hey, we're good to go," and we've kind of puzzled them into kind of what we think will work out. Essentially, we don't have any left if the allotment of times is correct. So again, that's pretty crazy. And those are groups that have been working with us kind of the late fall time frame. I mean, that's September, October of 2024 for intended play in all of 2026. So really that timetable has moved forward. So January is really too late. And honestly, it's going to get earlier and earlier for going forward for 2027, which we'll talk about, which the Open will be at St. Andrews and the Old Course. And really not much has changed when it comes to the guaranteed tee times. As always, it does come with a complimentary round on another St. Andrews Links Trust golf course, which is great. So usually our groups will play either the new Castle or Jubilee. We'll receive again those times in kind of the late part of March of this year for all of next year. And then we'll find out the specific tee times in kind of the beginning, early parts of the summer. So you'll find out the exact date and exact tee time of when you're playing the old and that other complimentary round, which is nice. And the other thing too really has changed as well is the minimum stay requirements. Again, most companies have that a requirement from a stay or transportation standpoint. And as I said, for 2027, it crazy as it sounds, but it's really time to get going. And DJ will talk a little bit more about 2027, the Open, but we'll talk a little bit more about that too.
Well, and that's all great insight. Obviously, it's a nice bonus to have that second round that comes with the guaranteed tee time. But again, just wild that you're talking starting fall of essentially 2 years prior to your trip. So somebody that's looking to play in 2027, if the Open wasn't there, you're talking planning in the fall of that we're in 2025. So for 2027, and even if the Open wasn't coming, the time is already essentially here, before you know it in the next few months. But let's say you've struck out on a guaranteed tee time or you just don't want to go that way. There are a couple different options. There's three really still at your disposal. The first, as we've talked about in the past, is the direct application, or what used to be known as the direct application. It's now called the Swilken package. And this is a way for you to apply directly with the St. Andrews Links Trust for a tee time on the Old Course, and it does come with a second round, just like the guaranteed tee time does. So you've got 2 rounds at your disposal, and it's very much like a lottery. Functions similar to the ballot that Connor will talk about here in a minute. But the key thing to know is that obviously, like all things with golf travel right now, the demand is far exceeding supply as far as the number of people applying for these times versus the number that are available. You put in the application in September range. The results come out in early October, but we're talking thousands and thousands of applications for a number of times that is much smaller than that. And so, again, if you are relying on this as your way to play the Old Course, align your expectations. We do have a number of people every year that land their tee time this way, and then we can build out the rest of their trip around those times. But it is far from a sure thing. And what's interesting about that is that when I joined the company back in 2013, this was the way that the majority of our travelers played the Old Course. It may not have been a sure thing, but it was pretty close to it. And things have just obviously inverted, to the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of demand. And it is definitely not that sure thing, but again, it does happen. And then the other is the singles queue, or what used to be known as the singles queue. We talked about how back in 2018, I slept outside the old pavilion, and that was kind of the tradition for years and years. Open individual slots were essentially filled on a first come, first served basis, but the first come side of that equation happened, in the middle of the night. Well, no more. There's no more sleeping outside. You essentially go to the Links Clubhouse or the old pavilion the day before. There's an iPad terminal in there. You'll enter your information for the next day, and you'll essentially be entered into more or less another ballot or another lottery for those open slots. It takes your picture, and unlike the ballot, which I think is a pretty important feature of this particular method, you have to be in St. Andrews. You can't be at Turnberry and enter the singles daily draw. But it is another great way to potentially land on the Old Course. Again, the number of entries is far exceeding the supply, especially depending on when you're there. If you're talking mid-July, your odds are a whole lot lower than mid-April. But Connor, this kind of also carries or ties into the daily ballot, which is another biggie when it comes to landing a tee time for the old course.
We'll talk more about the ballot here and kind of how the process works. And I also want to chat about how the direct application, or sorry, the Swilken package and the daily draw, as well as the ballot, kind of intertwine the three of them, and they so much do. So the ballot is you can actually do this. You do this 2 days prior of intended play. So say if you wanted to play the old course on a Thursday, you would put your ballot in on Tuesday, and it doesn't have to be in person. Unlike the daily draw, you can do this from wherever, pretty much. So when I did this, I wanted to play on a Friday. Don't do what I did. I just applied for the ballot on one day. It was on a Friday, and I was in Aberdeen on Wednesday, and I put it in on my phone on Wednesday, and it was thankfully successful with my friend Larkin. So again, 2 days prior of intended play, and the results come out on that evening. So they would come out on Tuesday evening, again, for intended play on that Thursday. So that gives you that evening as well as the following day to potentially move tee times around if you are successful. The ballot, it's like anything. It's essentially a lottery. More people are more successful in kind of the off seasons. So the April and May timeframes into October, again, there's less people traveling. There's less people there. Yeah, there are less tee times to be had because those summer months of June, July, August, you got the long summers, more tee times. But again, there's more people there during those months. The big thing we kind of wanted to mention too is for balloting, it's Monday through Saturday, and I would say your best times to get on, especially from a result standpoint, is Saturdays. And the reason why is guaranteed times are Monday through Fridays. So there's no guaranteed tee times on Saturday. So it's a pure ballot day. So as a planner, we kind of like to route the trip where your last day in country is balloting. It's a pure ballot day on Saturday to increase those odds. But again, it's kind of like everything. And as DJ mentioned, it's kind of a flip of a coin. We'll have groups that are successful in June, July, August. And there's usually we kind of like to say, hey, go in April or October where you have better results. And sometimes they'll go just because they want the longer summer months and they're successful. Great. We'll also have some that'll take our advice and go in April and they'll ballot multiple days and they don't hit. It literally is a complete lottery, and it's picking your name from a hat, and it's completely up in the air, and you have really no rhyme or reason again why it'll be picked or not. And kind of what I wanted to go back to is how they kind of all intertwine. So again, you have the direct application. You're going to apply for that, a few months out prior to play. So we'll have some groups that are planning on balloting and say, we booked their trip and they're going in the first week of, say, August, just throwing that out there. We'll plan on them balloting, but to also increase their odds, we'll have them put in that direct application for that week that they're going to be there in August. So that can help too. So potentially they get that tee time and that, time that they're in August. Great. We'll obviously not have them ballot because I've got that tee time. Also, if you're over there and you're planning on balloting each day, so say if you apply you put in your ballot for Tuesday for intended play on Thursday, you're not successful on Tuesday night. Well, Wednesday you can go and do the singles daily draw and potentially get a time. So there's multiple ways to do this outside of the guaranteed time. Really goes back to hiring a company such as H&B, because we have all these different insights and information where we can increase your odds, especially if you're too late to getting that guaranteed time. So I just wanted to mention that as well. There's multiple different ways of doing this, and don't feel like you're out, without getting that guaranteed time. There are different ways, but again, it is not guaranteed, as the name is in it. Yeah, that's kind of the information on the ballot.
Well, that's a really great point about groups that start out thinking, oh, I'll just ballot. No big deal if I don't get on. But then putting their application in, because you had a couple groups for last year that I remember. In fact, one of them was a 40th birthday. And talk about a great 40th birthday present. You're going to St. Andrews, you're thinking you're just going to ballot. And then you put in the Swilken package application and bang, you've got a guaranteed time. So, it's all very, very fluid. But I think the one biggie that comes out of that is that, as we were just talking about with, the early planning, by the time the results come out for the Swilken package, you're basically out of luck for a guaranteed tee time at that point. You might find one floating around out there, but odds are going to be very much against you in terms of them pivoting back to a guaranteed time.
Yeah, you're right. And kind of another thing there too is, when the results come out for the Swilken package, if you're successful, great. Like you mentioned, that 40th birthday, they went in May and it was a group of 8 gents and they all hit, which was amazing. So they had that guaranteed time. And I think they played the Jubilee course along with that. But the one thing to mention too is if you have that expectation that we're going to be able to play Muirfield and Royal Troon and other courses, again, those results usually come out in September or so time frame, sometimes October, depending on it. And at that standpoint, they're really, it doesn't, even if it's April or October for the following year, you probably won't be able to get those marquee courses. Now, this group, they wanted to play Carnoustie. We had them on the wait list and weren't able to get them accommodated. It's just the nature of the beast of this and kind of waiting for that. So just different things to think about when going through all these different processes, and not only how it affects the old course, but how it affects other golf throughout your trip.
Yeah, I mean, the old course is the one driving everything, but yet everything is busy. We've talked about it before. You really got to dial in how important the old course is to your goals for the trip. If you're going to go home completely devastated because you didn't get to play the old, then there's one solution, is really what it comes down to. If you are okay with going and soaking up the town and rolling the dice on the other three options, and if you hit, fantastic, it's a bonus. If you don't, then well, no big deal. You're going to be much better off, because as we've said candidly, the odds are against you on that, but it does happen. Stuff has a funny way of happening in St. Andrews. I've always said that because stuff just does. It's just the way it is, and you just really never know what will shake out of it. But the one thing we do know is that aside from the four ways to land a tee time, the big elephant in the room, if you will, is that the Open is coming back to the old course. When we recorded 2 years ago this episode, that had not been announced, though we probably could have assumed it was coming sometime in these couple of years. But back in January, they announced coming back in 2027 for the old course. This is going to have a knock-on effect in a handful of ways. The exact way it's going to affect guaranteed times, we don't completely know yet, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the way guaranteed tee times were handled for a long time changed back around 2018 or so. Well, the first Open that we had after that was also the year coming out of COVID. So things were not quote unquote normal in terms of how the process and travel and all of those things were handled. This is going to be more or less our first quote normal Open in St. Andrews in terms of how the rest of the year is then handled from a tee time standpoint. But what we do know is that the old course is likely to be closed for roughly a month leading up to the tournament. That's what it was back in 2022, and I think that's kind of how the R&A sets it up everywhere these days. Is the courses are closed for about a month leading up to the tournament. And so if you think about just the straight math of that, you're losing roughly 20% of the golf travel season just simply because the course is closed. So that means everyone else is essentially sandwiched into this shorter period of time, either before or after the tournament. All of which is to say, the time is now, that we are already there. Whether you're with us or another company or however you're planning it out, your time to begin planning is already here for 27. Looking beyond that is where it's really going to get interesting, because again, going back to 2022, we received multiple months worth of inquiries in about a 10-day span surrounding the 2022 Open. There's no reason to think that's not going to repeat itself then when the Open comes in 2027. St. Andrews is the driver for all things travel, and you put it in front of the big screen for all of those days, the interest is only going to skyrocket, which means that, again, by the time the Open is done in 27, well, 28's already off the board because those tee times are gone from a guaranteed tee time standpoint. So you're really looking at 2029, right? As wild as that sounds, Connor, do I have that math right? Like
You're right. It's
okay. Okay.
It's weird. It's so weird to say, but
All right.
yes.
I'm making sure I had that right. So yeah, so the overall point is that the next few years with the old course are going to be a little interesting. And so if the old course is, vital to your trip as it is for a lot of people, understandably so, you're definitely going to want to need your ducks in a row and someone in your back pocket to help you through it.
You're right. And yeah, it's going to be a wild next few years. I mean, honestly, going up until 2030, it's crazy, but yeah, it's kind of the case. And again, as you mentioned, the old will be closed about a month before. And already a lot of the inquiries that we're getting for 2027, again, since it's been announced in kind of late January, so about a month after or before we're recording this podcast, give or take, everyone, what they're wanting to do is go to the Open, watch it, and then play it after. Now, the old usually does open the week after for play, the Open Championship again in past historical years. I'm putting an asterisk on that. So if the expectation is to do that, you're coming in for a different not rude awakening, but a different reality, if you will, of what maybe your initial plan would be. So maybe stay home and watch it and then go a different month. That we can do. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, thinking back to 2022, do you remember the mountain of golf bags that were in Edinburgh Airport when they had the chaos with the golf bags? There were hundreds of golf bags stacked up in the Edinburgh Airport. Now, that's not the story. The story is that the entire world of golf is in Scotland when the Open is in Scotland. And if you're thinking that, hey, tournament's over on Sunday, Monday is a media day, I think sometimes with with the R&A and so forth. Well, maybe I'll play it the week after. You are not the only person that has this idea. I can assure you, thousands of other people are in the queue. And so, yeah, it's just, you're going to really need to align those expectations if you're hoping to play the old course immediately after the Open, or really in 2027 at all, simply because, everyone else is going to be in line.
Yeah, you're right. And just to kind of give, I mean, while we're on the topic of this from dates, so this is 2022. This is exact dates. So the old course closed on the 18th of June of 2022, and it did not open up until Tuesday, the 19th of July. So again, about a month of time that it was closed. And again, you were actually 100% right. There's that media day on Monday, and then it opens up back to the public, if you will, on that following Tuesday. So again, I'm not saying the cards are out for playing it
the
week after.
I'll say it. Again,
Yeah.
This is all about setting folks up for success. That's
Correct.
all we're trying to do here. We want you to have the best trip possible. We want things to line up with what you're hoping the trip's going to be. And if you're hoping to play the old course on July 20th of 2027, Connor's reaction has it down.
And honestly, we roll to the punches just as much as the other side of the table for the group too. We're trying to kind of figure it out and give you the best possible trip that is up to your expectations. So that's why we're here. So, but looking forward to 2027, as it may sound so far away. It really isn't. It always thinks two years is out, and it's here like the snap of your fingers. So looking forward to that. And if anyone has any questions about 2027, we're just going to get some more details once time gets closer. But yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about doing a trip that year and including the old course, the time is now. And I'm saying that with all seriousness. And hopefully everyone believes it after listening to this too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, that's a great way to end it. I mean, you're right. There's nothing like the Open in St. Andrews. And I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking, man, is it, Tiger didn't give us the Swilken Bridge pose. Is this the year? Does it happen? I don't know, but I'm going to get a little misty just thinking about it, but it's going to be special. The Open in St. Andrews, there's just nothing like it. I cannot wait, and I'm thoroughly excited for all of our friends in the home of golf for what's to come in the couple of years. But as usual, we will kind of wrap everything up in terms of other resources and so forth in the show notes. If you've got any questions, just like Connor said, shoot us a DM on social media or email us, golf@haversham.com. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We will be back again soon with another episode. Until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.